Hi again, I'm Stephen Wessner, CEO of Predictive ROI. And for today, I want to dig into the topic, a question that I'm actually asked by business owners quite often, and that is, what is sponsorable? Like, what content could you be creating on a weekly, monthly basis, on a consistent basis, that would be worthy of sponsorship? So first, let's talk about the different types or different pieces, the different kinds of cornerstone content, whether those are modalities, genres, however you want to describe them. And so whether that's writing or talking, that might be having a blog, that might be being a professional speaker, being on stage, that might be writing a series, being a guest columnist for Forbes, perhaps. That might be having a rockin' awesome podcast. It might be having a YouTube series. That might be a book. So there's a variety of different pieces of cornerstone content. So think of all of those from like a media perspective. Think of all of those as properties. And something I learned from our guest Linda Hollander way back in episode 363 of Onward Nation was, Stephen, every time you create this thing, if it's a podcast or a blog or a whatever, a sponsor will look at that as a potential media property. And that's how you as a business owner need to position it, that you have multiple properties available for sponsorship. And so if somebody says, hey, I want to sponsor your blog or I want to sponsor your podcast. And take that incrementally. Well, a sponsorship for X amount of dollars might look like this, and it will include the blog, but it won't include distribution to our email list, or it'll include our podcast, but it won't include participation on our YouTube channel. So, because all of those represent your media properties or your assets. And all of that is sponsorable. So it takes a little bit of creativity to put together a sponsorship proposal. If you go back to that episode with Linda Hollander, she actually maps out all of the pieces, the key ingredients that go into a sponsorship proposal, so that you can start to gather all of that and organize it properly. You know, the podcast, the blog, or an article series, you know, those might seem like those are kind of the obvious sort of properties, right? Those are like the tip of the iceberg. Those are the things that everybody sees. Well, of course, you know, sponsoring the YouTube series or the podcast series, you know, whatever. Those are kind of top of mind. But let's go maybe beneath the surface and look at some of the other big opportunities, but maybe not, you know, right easily seen right above the surface. So the first one might be an ebook. So for example, let's say that you have a rockin' awesome business to business podcast and you've interviewed 3 or 4 thought leaders on a topic of maybe it's system design or efficiency or HR or whatever. And then you take those 3 or 4 thought leaders who don't compete with one another, but they complement, their expertise is complementary with one another. You take that and you create an ebook. And then you sell sponsorship, because now that ebook, again, it's a media property. You sell sponsorship then to that particular ebook. Or you know, maybe you take 3 or 4 episodes, maybe they're episodes of your solo cast, you knit those together, and then that becomes the curriculum that you use for a webinar that you teach then and share with your audience. Or maybe you take that content, 3 to 4 or 5 different solo casts, knit that together, and that becomes your curriculum that you teach in person at a live event. Maybe it becomes, you know, the workshop binder, and it becomes all the curriculum that you share over a 1-day or 2-day event. All of those things are sponsorable, right? The ebook is sponsorable. The webinar series is sponsorable. Certainly the live event. Sponsors love live events, right? Because it's a way for them to get in person and interact with, you know, potentially prospective customers for them. So think about some of all of these, you know, unique slices and dices that you can use to not only create additional leverage of your thought leadership, but then also to create additional media properties. Here's another one. Maybe after you've done 100 or 200 either episodes or blog posts or YouTube, you know, videos, you could take that, and create transcripts of all of those different pieces. and then give it to a researcher in order to create bona fide research. You become then the authority, the person, the expert, maybe even the first one in your space to have done statistically valid research on all of this qualitative and quantitative data that you've collected over the last 1 year, 2 years. And as our guest at Onward Nation, Joe Calloway, likes to say, you've then created a category of one. So now you've taken content, cornerstone content that you should be creating on a weekly basis for your audience, your prospects, your customers anyway, to be helpful to them. Now you've taken it and sliced and diced it, so you've created additional leverage. You're not a one-trick pony. They see you everywhere. That's all awesome. But now you've taken it and gone even further and turned yourself into a media channel. If you want to read a great book on that topic, I highly recommend the book Killing Marketing, which is phenomenal, and they dissect all the different ways that companies have become media channels. Back in episode 42 of Onward Nation, when I interviewed Gary Vaynerchuk at VaynerMedia, which was awesome, one of the predictions that he made was that business owners need to transform themselves into media companies. That was 4 years ago, and we're seeing it today come true. So a little bit of prognostication on Gary's part, but you can do that. Follow this, take this advice, give me your feedback, drop me some comments in the fields below. Let me know your questions, concerns. I'm happy to answer those, and give me some feedback too along the way. That's what helps us get better every single day. I hope this was helpful to you. I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks very much. Until then, onward with gusto.